Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. Somebody asked me if I'd been here before, and my answer is I can't remember. I've been doing this for 25, 30 years, but then I thought, yes, I think I drove through here once in the middle of the night to get to Macedonia, and I remember getting stopped by a policeman and having to pay him something to continue. That was my memory, sorry. Okay. Here we go. Why is this not the... Okay. So as you heard in my introduction, I've been researching fish and rivers for some 25 or 30 years, and I've come to a point in my life where the word electricity is in the title of my presentation, and this shows you where I'm at with this topic. I normally didn't do this, but for the past year or two, I've been getting deeper and deeper into the energy aspect of this battle of protecting rivers. And it's fascinating, it's frustrating, but I think we also need to learn more about what's going on in order to protect our rivers. And the first point I have, I'm a little confused with this, is ask yourself, is there such a thing as green energy? I've never seen green energy. I don't think you've ever seen green energy. There's no blue energy or purple energy or red energy. I think this is a bad term to use. Everything has its advantages and disadvantages, and all forms of energy have their environmental impacts. Even so, I'm very supportive of solar energy, but of course we have to make the panels, and sometimes we're using batteries, and having solar panels on rooftops is great and maybe not great in agricultural fields. So there's always these pluses and minuses, and we should be honest when we're talking about this. But hydropower is the most ecologically damaging form of so-called renewable energy. And that's a scientific fact. That's established in the literature through hundreds and hundreds of articles. No serious academic person questions that. So when we talk about so-called renewable energy, yes, hydropower in general does have the most damage on our environment. Renewable. Is hydropower renewable? Well, in the traditional sense of the word, yes. Traditional meaning, where did the term renewable come from? Is when we thought about running out of oil and gas and coal, something that was a big topic 40 years ago. We're going to run out. Well, we're not running out. So that's a little bit silly. But let us take a step back, and I think I first heard this from Uli. The hydropower, the water might be renewable, but the rivers and species that are lost are not. And that should be always part of our conversation when that word renewable comes up. And I have these pictures of these Balkan rivers, part of the Blue Heart campaign, the Lim River, the Tara River, the Una River, and I just came from Greece, and I had this picture of the Kalama River in Greece. So we have all these beautiful, wonderful rivers to save in the Balkans. Again, hydropower is the most destructive because of the large dams which fragment our river systems. It's destructive because examples like Uli showed this is in Austria, by the way. This is not in the Balkans. It's again this Tyrolean Weir model, which, believe it or not, this is legal because this dam was built before Austria, it was licensed before Austria entered the European Union. So to take 100% of the water is no longer legal, but you can take 95%, so it's still very, very bad. And this was this is a Balkan example with a nearly dry riverbed, a fish pass with almost no water in it. And again, we kept hearing again and again today already how precious and scarce water is in the Balkans. And I just came from Greece, where this topic was raised again. In the Mediterranean region in the last 30 years or so, river flows have already been reduced by 30%. And it was mentioned 16% here in Kosovo and 20% in the future. I've seen modeled figures where from Croatia on south and the Balkans, over the next 50 years, there's going to be a reduction of 40% in precipitation. So remember that when this battle of water interests and water rights and stakeholder conflicts are coming, it's only going to get worse and worse and worse with water in the Balkans. And that's a very important concept to keep in mind when we're talking about hydropower. We have direct death of fish through turbines, through pumps and whatnot, and we have this flushing issue, which maybe is not so dramatic with the very small hydropower plants we're talking about in Kosovo, but it's a huge problem in the Balkan Peninsula and throughout. I'm going very quickly with the hydropower because I want to spend more time on the energy. I also authored, in support of the Blue Heart campaign, a report on endangered species in the Balkan Peninsula, endangered through hydropower, and it's a large report, and I urge you to look at it because it has a really nice summary about the impacts of hydropower in it. And I take one little example from this report because it's the only fish I found in the report that was mapped into Kosovo, and that was this Drin Brook lamprey, which was found mapped up here where there was a whole chain of power plants being planned at that time that would eliminate up to 75% of this endemic species. And the report surveyed 113 fish species in the Balkan Peninsula, 69 of which were endemic, and 21 of them would become either extinct globally or in the region if all these power plants were built, and a large percentage of the fish would lose a large percentage of their habitat. That was the major output of this report that I did. So we know the problem, we've heard about it already today. The only supposedly neutral property of hydropower in terms of the environment is they don't produce greenhouse gas, but they do. So this is an old myth, and it has been completely discarded. Even the major energy companies are no longer advertising that hydropower does not produce greenhouse gas. And it started with this famous example back in 2002 where this dam in the tropics in Brazil was shown to produce more greenhouse gas than the entire city of Sao Paulo. And since then, hundreds of publications have shown that yes, indeed, all reservoirs produce some greenhouse gas. Those in the tropics, those in the southern areas of climate zones produce even more than the equivalent of a gas or other fossil fuel powered plants, and we have more and more data on that. So yes, even that is not true. So there is no neutral aspect to hydropower with respect to the environment. So must we choose then between renewable energy and nature? Here is a terrible example of the Ulog Dam construction on the upper Neretva River, the construction site, and here's the picture of the free-flowing river above that site, the beautiful Neretva River. Must we choose between these two scenarios in order to implement this energy transition? And the answer is no. And we must learn to communicate that when we are talking to people who maybe don't have the background that we have. Say, yeah, but renewable energy. Well, the answer should be no. And now for the rest of my talk, I'm going to try to convince you why that answer should be no. So here is a graph globally that the growth in solar and wind energy is far, far, far outpacing the growth in hydropower. And 350% growth over the last 20 years. And this graph stopped in 2023. It has continued on at the same pace in 2024. You see that hydro has just grown a little bit. It used to be almost the only renewable energy we had, and now it's being surpassed by the growth in solar and wind, which incidentally is also cheaper now as well. When we look at the European level, we see that there's been more than 40% growth per year over the last 4 years in solar and wind. And when I got this graph, stole this graph from the internet, it stopped in 2023. I added in this column for 2024, and it was even more growth than the prior year. So solar energy in Europe is exploding. This is just solar, not wind. Top 10 countries, I picked this graph up because for 2 reasons, because I was just in Greece, and Greece is one of the 10 countries, but also to emphasize that Germany is heading out. Germany's bigger than a lot of these other countries, but Germany has been outpacing all of the other countries in Europe in growth in solar. And that's weird because when you look at the solar incident map, as you move into the Balkans, you have up to double the amount of solar energy per square meter as Germany. Up to double, okay? So really, there is no excuse why solar should not be growing faster in the Balkans, because there is a lot of sun. Okay, now I'm going to show a few complicated graphs that really illuminate some of the dynamics and some of the problems that are occurring with the growth in these in renewable energy. And most of this information is coming from this website, and I must apologize about something because I planned on showing some details about Kosovo and Albania, and Kosovo and Albania are also available at this website, but apparently because they are not yet they are not yet a European member, they are not yet in full compliance with the reporting. So the information is not the same, and it's very confusing. I decided to leave it out. I'm going to show you other countries, both in the Balkans and outside, to make the point. And Kosovo and Albania is probably right in the middle of the spectrum of examples I'm going to show you. So the dynamics are surely the same, but I can't give you the details because the details aren't there, at least not publicly available. So we start with one graph outside of the Balkans because it really shows some amazing things. This is the public utility grid, the public lines in Austria in 1 week last year in May. And what does all this mean? We have solar energy here, this yellow. We have wind energy, this light green. And what is this black line? This is the grid, the utility lines at full capacity, which means that the solar energy and the wind production in Austria is far exceeding what people are using in the public lines, okay? And that means what? That means the energy is being exported at that time, okay? And down here, this dark blue is the run-of-the-river, not even the storage power plants and not the pump storage, the run-of-the-river power plant production in Austria. And Austria has by far the densest grid of hydropower, perhaps in the world, certainly in Europe. So if you think, oh, I have all this great hydropower. Now I'm going to show you something. What does run-of-the-river plants mean? That means the water's constantly flowing through the dam. It's not being stored, it's not being pumped, it's flowing. And yet, we have on a daily basis a drop of about 2,000 megawatts of production. Why do we have that drop in production? Because we have solar during the day that's far exceeding our needs. How does this get done? You can't shut off the river. Okay? Well, they just let the water go over the top of the dam and not through the turbines. And when I first saw this, I thought the companies must be wild with anger because where's their money? And this is where it starts to get really complicated, because the power companies were not complaining at all. The reason is that we have, here's the run-of-the-river power plants, these large fluctuations. And I want to emphasize, this wasn't happening 2 years ago. This started happening as of 2 years ago and got extreme last year, because within 2 years, 1 to 2% of the potential for solar energy on buildings was expanded in Austria. So within 2 years' time, with just 1 to 2% of the potential solar energy, suddenly half the hydropower in the entire country wasn't needed anymore. Just like that. Okay? Now the other thing I'm going to show you, I can't remember what comes next. Yeah, I'm going to give you a couple more examples before giving another point about why the companies weren't complaining. Here is Croatia's net electricity demand and generation in March, the last week of March this year. Very different than Austria, okay? So we have our grid again, and you can see they're not even producing sometimes what they need, which means they're importing. There's your pumped storage coming up in the night. And here they have some wind, sometimes exceeding their needs. And you have here there's a lot of large dams in Croatia, unfortunately, and providing fluctuating electricity there. But where's the sun? Okay. There's no sun in Croatia, of course. We all know that, right? Croatia is way, way, way behind at producing solar energy. And it's a crime. It's unbelievable. It's unexplainable, because obviously they have a lot of solar potential, much more than Austria or Germany. But it's not being built at all. Okay? Now here's Greece, which is one of the Balkan countries that does have a growing solar production. And you can see similar, and it's huge, okay? And believe me, it's just a few percent of their potential. Just a few percent, and it's far exceeding their demand on many days of the year. Now, here is wind. They also have some wind power. Here is solar. Here is their grid load. And then there's a strange thing here I want to point out. That here's day, here's night. So wind can compensate solar, and then in Germany it does this almost completely. You have these solar peaks all summer long that sometimes overproduces the needs in Germany, and in the winter you have the wind. And here it is in Greece, the same thing, wind and solar, but here's gas. And they're also producing a lot of electricity by gas, a peak, when they're already exceeding their needs. What is going on there? Now this gets very complicated. At any moment in time, every European country, including Kosovo, including Albania, is both exporting and importing energy. It's very complicated. At the same moment in time, sometimes net exporting, sometimes net importing, but there's a lot of exchange going on. It's a free market, okay? It's an open, free market. And we have, I'm going to show you, a lot of dynamics going on with price. And I don't want to say we shouldn't be importing and exporting, and I don't want to say there's going to be some law to stop that from happening. That's not going to happen. But when the free market, most economists love the free market, when that's undercutting our public needs or goods or goal, then something's not right. So if we have an excess of renewable energy, why are we producing a peak of non-renewable energy? It's just about optimizing profits all the time, okay? So that's not working right there, okay? Something's going wrong when a country has an excess of renewable energy and at the same time is cranking up the gas power generation because there's a profit optimization going on. And here's the crux of the matter, which makes this very, very complicated. This red line is the spot price of electricity. And this is happening throughout the European Union, throughout the world as well. It's going up and down wildly, and it's reaching zero or going into the negative, okay, every day. So what does a negative price mean? As the taxi driver in Greece that brought me to the airport said, his electricity price never goes down to zero, huh? And yours doesn't either. But on the free market and for the utilities and the large energy companies, it does. Which means that when the price is negative, electricity has the value of garbage. You have to pay somebody to take it away. Okay? Now, under such conditions, utilities and large electric companies can figure out, they're smart, they're always smart, they've got people on the computers, they've got people working for them, how to optimize this situation for profit. And so the energy companies in this wildly dynamic system right now are actually making record profits, okay? Now, when the electricity price goes down to zero, that Austrian example I showed you, they're shutting off their water because they can't put any more electricity into the grid. The capacity is not there, but they do need a little bit of electricity, so they actually buy it at a negative price. That's why they're not complaining. I thought when the Austrian Power Association has to shut off half of their hydropower, they're going to be angry. Well, they weren't angry because they were cashing in on a negative price. So things are getting very, very crazy with electricity at the moment, and we are very often, in many scenarios, over many months, overproducing or having the capacity to overproduce, although we're only scratching the surface at how much solar energy there is there. Okay? So, and here is, why did I go? Oh, I went backwards, sorry. Yeah, production. Now, as the graph before showed I showed you this gas situation, right? Where despite overproduction of renewable energy, they were cranking up the gas. And I think, what is going on there? And in this next graph, it shows you that actually there was a peak price right at that exact same moment. So that's why they're producing everywhere they can, because there was a peak price, okay? And a little bit closer to home here, here's the Bosnia-Herzegovina situation. Here's their grid, and the entire time they're overproducing. So they're exporting. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of coal generation going on at the same time, which is weird. Here's your storage. This is not solar or wind. Here's your storage hydropower. Here's pumped storage. But look at this. Here's their grid. Here's their demand. And all this very environmentally destructive operation is going on despite the fact, and with coal, despite the fact that their grid is full of electricity, so way beyond demand. Okay? No generation far exceeds grid load. Now this all gets complicated because of course that means they're exporting to somebody else and maybe somebody else is in need. But again, where's the solar here? There's almost none. Why? Nobody's building it, at least not at the commercial level that we could or should. You just saw Greece, you saw Austria, Germany I didn't show you, but it's the same. Bavaria has just an amazing amount of solar energy, although it's much further north. Now, how did Bavaria achieve that? It wasn't that each individual person in their little house started building solar panels. They had a special law, special situation where utility companies came in, rented the roofs off the people's houses and put up the solar, and then people got a special deal. They just had to sign and say yes, and utility companies put up the solar. I don't know anywhere else that's done that, maybe somewhere else in Europe, but most European countries don't do that. And so they rely on promotion programs or the individuals investing on the roofs. Very, very inefficient. I find that idea of a community or a town just doing it all at once and having a utility company invest the money that nobody personally has to invest, get a cheap price for electricity, seems like a nice model. Again, where is the solar energy? Okay. Coming down to a couple key points here, the idea with all this is that the potential is amazing for other forms of renewable energy. The problems are transmission and storage, okay? And I just threw this in there. There's such a thing called, this maybe gets a little technical, but high voltage DC transmission lines. They're amazing. It's not what we normally have. It's not what you see outside here, but they are built in special situations with minimal loss for maximum amounts of electricity, and they can be built for thousands of kilometers. China's building them thousands of kilometers long, okay? We do have them in Europe. These red things are already built. That's why Scandinavia is able to send so much renewable energy to the continent. With the UK, there's a lot of lines. It's easier to lay them across the water because you're not involving private property and everything like that. And where you have islands and stuff, it's being done in Europe. The blue lines are proposed, the green ones are in construction, and Germany has had for years, they've been battling, trying to transmit renewable energy to the south or back and forth, struggling because of battles of private property and whatnot. But this technology exists, it's ripe, it's existed for a long time. It's just a matter of where can we implement it. And batteries, ooh, evil topic, right? I just wanted to point out that there are amazing alternatives to lithium batteries being built. And this is just one example, the first iron air battery. No lithium, no rare metals, 1/10 the price of a lithium battery. And here's the first factory that I know of that's building them at utility scale. It's brand new, so it's not out there. You can't order one because they already got 5 years of backed up orders for their batteries. But there is cleaner, cheaper alternatives to lithium batteries. It's not for cars or your computer because they're too heavy. But for utility use, for homes, for factories, this exists, okay? And there are many other storage technologies being developed. Also low-tech versions, like compressed air and just gravity and just having blocks go up and down. There's all kinds of things going on. It's coming. In the next 5 to 10 years, we will have many alternatives to expensive or dangerous lithium batteries to store energy, okay? So this is absolutely fixed. It's coming. There will be alternatives. And I want to re-emphasize as my last point that, especially here in Kosovo, especially in the Balkans, that water is our most precious resource. And as it gets less and less, we should be preserving it. And when you build reservoirs and you build dams, you're losing water through evaporation, especially with a warming climate. Okay? Good. So my points are the energy transition is well underway with solar and wind, And growth in hydropower is playing a minimal role. It's really small. With only minimal exploitation of solar energy over the last years, production can already exceed demand, leading to massive shutdowns of run-of-the-river hydropower plants, making this form of energy for the future obsolete, in my view. Okay? Operation of storage hydropower, okay, can be utilized in this crazy grid situation we have, but doing so is the most damaging type of hydropower there is. Shutting the water on and off is like a hurricane blowing through the river twice a day. It destroys life at an incredibly rapid pace. So that doesn't work well, does it? Okay? Many Balkan countries lag far behind the development of solar despite much higher theoretical potential. We heard today that Kosovo does have expanding solar. I read that there's actually a solar panel plant somewhere near here that's going on. So that's really good to hear. I couldn't show you numbers because they weren't publicly available. I didn't have the details. But maybe people have started to wake up in Kosovo that potential is there, and that's where the attention should be being paid, and not these, especially these small hydropower plants. They're almost, as Uli pointed out, they're almost useless in this situation right now. The future challenges to energy transition lie only, I'm saying only, with efficient storage and transmission. We don't have any problem producing electricity. Producing electricity is easy. It's transmitting. We need lines. We need higher capacity lines, transmission lines, and more intelligent storage and use. And these common things, oh, the sun doesn't shine at night. Forget that. Just laugh at that, because A, it comes back up every morning the next day, and B, we use a lot less electricity at night. It's something people forget. Oh, we turn the lights on. Well, no. We use 30 to 35% less electricity at night than during the day. Don't forget that. And the wind doesn't always blow. Yes, it does. Somewhere. Somewhere the wind is always blowing. Okay? So as the networks and expands, somewhere we're getting wind energy and somewhere we're getting solar energy. And just a shift of an hour or so, like between time zones or something, is a huge difference, because we have these peak usages as people just come home from work, or the factories just get started on. And so when you get solar energy from 2 hours away or something, you're already compensating for these changes. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
So maybe wait here, because we are going to have a family photography, and after we have a coffee break for 15 minutes. Questions? Okay. We're going to have a question now for him. Any question? But I thought, yeah.
You mentioned, my name is Samistagova, an environmental NGO. You mentioned the greenhouse gases created by the big dams. If you have like 2 minutes more just to explain how.
Sure, very quick. Yeah. So the breakdown of organic matter produces greenhouse gas, methanes and nitrous oxides. That means any organic matter in the water rots. When it rots, it produces greenhouse gas. So when you have a big reservoir, you accumulate organic matter, and that produces greenhouse gas. In these tropical reservoirs where you flood a rainforest, that's where it gets really extreme, because you have all this rotting vegetation and rotting wood, which goes on for decades and decades, producing greenhouse gas. It's not so extreme in our climate zone, but every reservoir produces greenhouse gas. The more organic material and the higher the temperature, the more the rate of greenhouse gas production. Yes, but it's true of natural lakes as well, to be honest. But it's not as extreme because lakes don't accumulate so much most of the time.
I'll do it in English real quick. Well, in regards to energy sector, we as a country, we are facing a severe situation right now. We basically are facing the energy prices soaring up again for 15% in the circumstances and environmental 21st century where you very well explained that it's very sustainable, we could do it, just we need some cooperation. Could you please spread the good word to our beloved government while you are here in Kosovo? Send the message and tell them you guys start to plan better, manage better, and also be part of Europe because we live here and we have the potential, we have the sun, we have the expertise, we just need some political, let's say, open-heartedness in order to actually implement those very well thought, and this good presentation could be very useful for our government. Thank you very much.
I can just add one sentence to that.
Yes, it's really possible, but we're battling these myths, these populistic myths. You hear them every day about solar and wind. It's all nonsense. And now we have, unfortunately, a president in the US doing the same thing. The biggest banana republic right now is the country I come from. We really can, and the way of doing this is actually joining with the energy company. They can do it. And they can make their money just as well as any time. You have to, though, switch the traditions. The easiest thing for any company to do is to just keep doing what they were always doing, right? That's the problem, okay? The money is there, the potential is there. The energy companies can be a partner in this, but not just continuing to pour concrete like they always pour. They have to switch their modus operandi, so to say. Yeah.
Thank you. So join us for the photography, and after we have a